Well, hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to make Tarte Tropézienne or a Saint-Tropez tart. This is a brioche dough which is cut in half and filled with a creme Diplomat or a creme mousseline or something like that. It was a recipe which was, or a baked item, confectionery, that was first created in 1955 in Saint-Tropez, and apparently it was named by Brigitte Bardot, who used to enjoy this when she was making a film. I think it was called When God Created Woman or something like that. But anyway, it looks very, very good, and it uses a brioche dough. Now I'm actually going to make a double recipe of brioche dough because I want to save some of it to make something else in the next few days. So if you want to do this recipe, you can halve the brioche recipe part of it if you want to, or you can make a double batch and freeze some of it and use it within 2 or 3 weeks to make something else or to make this again. And so having made the brioche dough, we have to let it proof, and then we're going to rest it overnight in the fridge before we go on to the next step. And also we will make the creme pâtissière, or a pastry cream, and we will put that in the fridge overnight as well. We'll need that tomorrow to mix with some whipped cream to make the filling. And the whole thing does take some time, but it's actually quite simple, really, if you have a stand mixer for making the dough. So I'll go on to the ingredients. And for the brioche dough, I have 500 grams, which is 3 1/3 cups of strong white bread flour. That's based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup. I have 50 grams, 1/4 cup of caster sugar. I have 10 grams of instant yeast, which is just over 3 teaspoons, a packet and a half basically. I have 1/4 teaspoon of salt, about 2 grams. I have 250 grams, 2 sticks plus 1.5 tablespoons of softened butter. And I have 5 medium eggs. That would be large in the USA. And I will need an extra egg later on and some pearl sugar to go on the top, but I'll tell you about that later on. So as well as that, I need 140 milliliters, which is 1/2 cup plus 4 teaspoons of milk, which is at about 42 degrees, which is just over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 42 Celsius, and that's for the dough. Then for the creme pâtissière, or the pastry cream custard, I have 360 milliliters, 1.5 cups of milk. I have 5 medium egg yolks, which would be large in the USA, 1 vanilla bean. I have 75 grams, which is 6 tablespoons of caster sugar. I have 50 grams, which is 3.5 tablespoons of butter. 50 grams, which is 1/3 cup of plain flour, again based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup. I'm going to use 150 grams of a whipping cream, or double cream or whipping cream, after I've made the pastry cream, and that is 1/2 cup plus 2 tablespoons. And I also have 5 milliliters, 1 teaspoon of orange blossom water. That's optional if you don't want it. These are often flavoured with orange blossom. If you don't want to use that, you don't have to. And then for a syrup to brush onto the lower half of the brioche, I have 160 milliliters, 2/3 cup of water, 65 grams, a quarter of a cup plus 1 tablespoon of sugar, and I have another 5 millilitres, 1 teaspoon of orange blossom water. So that's all the ingredients, and what we need to do is start off by making our dough. So I'm going to put my flour into the bowl of a stand mixer, and I'm going to put the yeast in as well, and the sugar and the salt, and I just mix that just a little bit like that, and then I'm going to add into that my milk, which is warmed as I mentioned, and the eggs. And I'm going to mix them on a slow speed to start with for a couple of minutes until everything starts to come together. So as you can see, that's begun to come together now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the speed and knead it for between 6 and 8 minutes until it forms a sort of glossy, stretchy dough. So I have kneaded that for a total of 10 minutes, and it's tacky but it's quite smooth and it's stretchy, as you can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now start to add my butter, and I'm going to put the butter in a bit at a time, and I'm going to knead that until it's fully incorporated, which should take 5 or 6 minutes. So I've let that knead for 6 minutes, and the butter has incorporated. So I'm actually simply going to take off the dough hook. I could transfer this to a bowl, but I'm going to leave it in the mixing bowl for the time being, and I'm going to cover that, and I'm going to leave it to proof until it's doubled in size, and that might take anywhere between an hour and 2 hours. And once it's doubled in size, I'll transfer it to another bowl and knock the air out of it, and then it's ready to proof in the fridge overnight for at least 8 hours, I would say. So I'll simply cover that with some plastic wrap and leave it until it's doubled in size, and then I'll come back, show you what it looks like. We'll put it in the fridge, and then we'll make our creme pâtissière as well. So my dough has now more than doubled in size, as you can see, and I'm going to knock the air out of it like that, and I'm going to tip that into another bowl. and I keep knocking the air out of it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover that with plastic wrap, and I'm going to put that into the fridge. And leave it overnight. So I've put my milk into a saucepan, and what I have done is I have cut my vanilla bean in half, and I've scraped the seeds out of each half, and I'm going to put the empty pod and the seeds into my milk. And I'm going to heat that milk on the stove quite slowly to start with, as the vanilla begins to infuse into it, and I want to heat it up until it's just about boiling. It begins to bubble just around the edges. That would be hot enough then to add into the egg mixture, which I'm going to make now. So I'm going to put my egg yolks into a bowl, and I'm going to add into that the sugar, and then I'm going to whisk those until they'll go pale and nice and fluffy. And that's good enough like that. So then I'm going to add in the flour, and I'm going to mix that until it's completely smooth. And that's smooth now, so we just need the milk to heat. And with the milk hot now, I'm actually going to pour just a little drop of it into the egg mixture, whisking to temper the eggs. And then continue to add the milk. And with that mixed together, I'm going to put that back into the saucepan, and I'm going to heat that until it starts to boil and it thickens. So I'll put that onto the heat, and I will whisk it all the time until it comes to a boil and thickens. So it's very important to whisk this all the time. As you can see, it's thickening now. And I want it to cook until it starts to bubble and spit, and that will tell me that it's cooked through. That is bubbling now, and it's nice and thick. I'm going to just cook that through so that I make sure that the flour is fully cooked through. And that's cooked now. So I'm going to take that off the heat and I'm going to put it into a bowl with the vanilla bean pod still in it. I'll take that out in the morning. Leaving it in just helps to infuse the vanilla flavour that little bit more. And with that in the bowl, I'm going to cover that with plastic wrap. But I'm going to push the plastic wrap down onto the surface so that it's touching and the custard doesn't form a skin. Just like that. And I'm going to leave that until it's cooled down. Then I'm going to put it into the fridge. And in the morning we will add the butter and the orange blossom water, and then we'll whip some cream and add the cream into it, and that will form the filling for our Tarte Tropézienne. Now the only other thing to do is to make a syrup, which is just using the water, the sugar and the orange blossom water that I mentioned in the ingredients. I'm going to put those into the saucepan and boil them until the sugar is dissolved, and let it boil for 3 or 4 minutes. Then I'll pour it into a dish and leave it to cool, and that will be ready to use in the morning as well. So it's now the next morning and my dough has rested in the fridge overnight. It did rise up and I knocked it back again. Then it rose up a little bit more and I knocked it back again. So this is what it looks like now. And as I said at the start of the video, I'm going to only use half of this and I'll use the other half for another video. So I'm just going to roughly cut about a half of it off and put that to one side for the time being. And this one I will sort of form it into a ball, and it's much more workable now that it's chilled, but it will warm up. So I want to roll this out into a circle so that about 1 centimetre thick, and I want to cut out a 9-inch 23 centimetre circle. And then whatever is left I can put with the remaining dough for the next video. So that's good. So what I'm going to do is I have part of my 9-inch springform pan here which I'm going to use. So I'm just going to use that to mark my circle, and then I'm going to cut around that and then I'm going to put that onto a baking tray. You could do this without the ring if you wanted to. It will still work quite well. And I have greased my ring. And I'm going to leave that covered to proof for about an hour or until it's doubled in size. So it's going to spread a little bit more just to come to the edge of the pan, and it will rise up until it's doubled in size. And as it's doubling in size like that, I would preheat my oven to 170 Celsius, that's about 340 Fahrenheit, ready to take the brioche when it's ready. And as that's rising, we'll go on and we'll make the combination of the creme patissiere and the whipped cream to make our creme diplomat. So as the dough is proofing, I've taken my custard out of the fridge, and I've removed one part of the vanilla bean pod, and there's the other part, so I'll remove that as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just whisk this to loosen it, and then I'm going to put in my butter and my orange blossom water and whisk those together. So that's loose enough, and I'll put the butter in and the orange blossom water, and I'll whisk those until they're all nicely combined. So that's good enough like that, and I'm going to put that in the fridge to chill it while I whip my cream as well. So with my 150 millilitres of cream in a bowl, and it's just the bowl that I had the custard in, I don't need to wash it because they're going to be combined anyway. I'm going to whip this until it's nice and thick, but not quite at stiff peak stage. So that's good. That's just about getting there, so that's as far as I need to go. So then I need to fold that into the custard mixture. And I'll do that, I'll take a little bit of it to start with, and I'll mix it in, which is going to loosen the mixture a little bit again. And then I'll put the remainder in. And I'm just going to turn that over, folding it until it's incorporated. And that's good enough. So then I'm going to put that into a piping bag. And that's in the piping bag, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that into the fridge, and I'm going to chill that until I have baked the brioche and it has cooled down, and this will then be ready to pipe on the brioche. So I'll come back once the oven is preheated and we're ready to bake the brioche. So my oven is preheating and my dough has risen. It hasn't spread to fill the tin, which I thought it would do, but that may be that I didn't have it quite cool enough when I rolled it out, but it doesn't matter, I don't think. So what I have here is one medium egg, which would be large in the USA, but one egg, with a pinch of salt in it and about half a tablespoon of milk, and I've just mixed that together. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to brush that gently over the top of the brioche dough. Like that. And then I have some pearl sugar, and this is pearl sugar. It's these rather large grains of sugar. If you don't have pearl sugar, you could use sugar cubes. You could even use some preserving sugar, which tends to be large grains, but pearl sugar is the traditional one, and I'm going to sprinkle that over the top. And with that covered in pearl sugar, I'm going to put that into the oven, and I'm going to bake it for 17 to 20 minutes. I think about 18 minutes should be enough to bake it all the way through. And then once it's baked through, I will take it out of the oven and allow it to cool down. And once it's cooled down, I'll come back and show you what we do next. I baked my brioche. I actually baked it for 20 minutes, and I then checked it and it looked perfectly fine. I tested the internal temperature and that was up above 90 degrees Celsius, which is towards 200 degrees Fahrenheit, so I knew that it was cooked inside. So I took it out of the oven and allowed it to cool down, and it's just about cool now, and I've actually cut mine in half. So this is what it looks like when it came out of the oven, except that it didn't have the knife poking through it. So I've sliced the top off like that, basically. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the syrup, which I mentioned, and the syrup is just orange water with water and sugar, which I boiled for 2 or 3 minutes. And I'm just going to brush a little bit of it over the top of the base. I'm not going to brush too much on. That will soak in quite easily. And you don't have to use the syrup if you don't want to, and I guess you could flavour it with something other than orange blossom water. So that's all I'm going to put on there, and then I'm going to take my cream and creme pat from the fridge, which I put into the piping bag, and I'm just going to cut the end off the piping bag so that I can pipe. Now how you pipe this is entirely up to you, or you could just spoon it on and spread it if you want to, but I'm just going to pipe around the edge like that. And with that just piped on, I'm going to pick the top up, which they refer to as the hat, I think. And I'm going to place it on the top and simply press it down like that. One final thing to do, which is quite common, is just to sprinkle over a little icing sugar onto the top. Again, I don't think you need it, but it seems to be the traditional way of serving it. Just like that. And then I'm going to transfer that to the fridge, and I'm going to chill it in the fridge until that cream sets just a little bit firmer than it is now. And then once it's done that, I'll come back and I'll cut it and we'll have a taste. So it's been a couple of hours now, and the Tarte Tropézienne chilled in the fridge. I think the cream's a little bit softer than I would like, to be perfectly honest, but it's fine. It's just that it's a little bit messy to eat. So I've cut it, and you can see it like that. Now maybe if I'd used a little bit of gelatin, it would have set a bit firmer, or maybe some more butter in the custard would have helped it set a bit firmer. But anyway, that's what it looks like. So I'll have a taste of it. Lovely soft brioche with the crunchiness of that pearl sugar on the top, and then that silky smooth cream infused with the orange blossom water, which gives it a little flavour. Very, very good. I think you might also perhaps use something like some almond extract or some lemon extract instead of the orange blossom water if you wanted to. It will work perfectly well. So very tasty. It takes a little bit of time to make, but I think it's worth the effort. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for the recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well. And I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.